Hi and welcome. This is a toolbox talk on time management. My name is Chris, for those that don't know me, and I just want to set the context that I am not a time management expert. I'm not a professional. I don't do seminars and go around and speak about this. I am just an ordinary guy. I'm married to Kat and I have 3 children. So you can imagine that my life is actually fairly busy. I do lots and lots of different things, and managing my time is something that I have to think about quite regularly. So the plan for this evening then is simply that we're going to think about how we use our time. There'll be time in this session for you to think that through. We're going to look at Jesus as the example of, in my opinion, the master of time management. And then we're going to chat through maybe some tools and ideas, and you can share in your group the things that you do to manage your time well. So, first question I guess is, why did you pick this toolbox talk? You've got loads and loads of other options. Why did you want to look at managing your time? I'm guessing that for many of you, you live busy lives. We all do. It's that typical question, isn't it? If you meet somebody in the street or you meet somebody you've seen, how are you doing? And their response will typically be, oh, I'm fine, thanks, just busy. Isn't that what we always say? You know, business itself isn't a bad thing. Being busy is a good thing. It's just when we have too many things to do, that's when things don't go well. So our relationship, I think, to time is really quite interesting. I've just been reading some books with Isabel the last few weeks, and one of them is The Magic Faraway Tree. I don't know if many of you remember that from Enid Blyton. Well, there's been a modern one that's been written by Jacqueline Wilson, and I was reading it the other night with her, and it talked about the land of unicorns. And for those that don't know The Magic Faraway Tree, it's basically a tree in a wood. It goes up into the clouds, and every now and then a different land will appear at the top. Now, when one of those lands appears, they can go and explore it. And they were in this land of unicorns and they were talking about it and all that. But one of the interesting comments that they made is, we're not bound by time here. Time isn't a thing. My clock just chimes when it wants to chime. And in fact, they had the example of this clock that then chimed 13. Isn't it interesting that in that kind of a book, it wanted to explore a world where we're not restricted by time? In the past, we used to, as human beings, be influenced by daylight hours. You know, time varied throughout the year. Sometimes in the year we had more time than at other points. Even across the country, people operated on different times. It wasn't until the railways, see, I could get trains in there somewhere, that we had what was called railway time, where everybody actually needed to be coordinated so that a train would arrive at the right time. Before Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, believe it or not, the average number of hours that people slept per night was 11. Now, I'm guessing if you chatted about that in your group, you'd find that not many of you sleep for 11 hours a night. So we now have lots of labour-saving devices, don't we, to try and help us to save time. Yet, in reality, I think we just spend that time on other things. Back in the 1950s, there was this general belief that as we had more and more of these devices, we would have more and more free time and we would be more content and more happy. But in reality, I think all we've done is use that extra time that we've saved to do other things that maybe don't fulfill us. As someone once said, time is the great leveller. It is one resource that is allocated in absolute egalitarian terms. Every living person has the same number of hours to use in every day. So we all have 24 hours. That is 1,440 minutes or 86,400 seconds. No more and no less. It doesn't matter if you are Elon Musk and you're a multi-billionaire, or you're a single parent and you're living on the breadline. We all start the day with exactly the same time in our account. There's many things in your life that you can change, and we all have very different circumstances, but you cannot get more time. So what do you do with your time? I'd like you to have a quick challenge now in your group. Maybe see if you could get your phone out and have a look at your usage tracking. Someone in your group will know how to do it. As you're doing that, a recent study shows that the average iPhone user actually touches their phone 2,600 times a day. The average person in 2021 was on their phone for 4 hours a day, and that was just the average. For millennials, it's far, far, far greater than that. Now, I get that we use our phones for loads and loads of really great stuff in our society, but a third of our waking day just seems a bit extreme to me. So in your groups, I would like you to just see if you can grab a big piece of paper, and I'd like you to just explore what it is you do with your time. In a typical week, how do you spend your time? Now, it's not the things you should do or the things that you wish you did, but the things that you actually do. You know, from as boring as cleaning, watching TV, or looking after your family, taking people to where they need to be, going to the gym, spending time with God, whatever it is. Let's just see if you can write down as many things as possible. And then discuss, when you look at it, how does that make you feel? Do you feel like you're making good use of your time? Do you feel overwhelmed? Just have a chat about that. Okay, I hope that was useful and you're not feeling too overwhelmed looking at all of the tasks that are there in front of you. Maybe it's making you feel inspired actually, and you thought, you know, between us we do some really, really great stuff. So we've already said that time is the great leveler, and we know that Jesus, despite being God, had exactly the same amount of time as us when he was on earth. So what did Jesus do with his time? There's probably like a whole sermon on this, but I'd like to suggest we've got 6 key things that we can pick from Jesus on how he used his time. There were competing demands in, all of our lives, and Jesus had competing demands put on him, but somehow he managed to master it. So here are those 6 points. Number 1, Jesus guarded his relationship with the Father. There were so many times when we see, despite all the things that needed to be done, he went and he spent time with his Father. He was in prayer, studying the scriptures. There's a passage that says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. That was after a long evening of speaking and healing that he decided to do that. So number 2, Jesus wasn't driven by the expectations of others. Instead, he was driven by the call that his Father God had put on his life. So you probably know that passage in Colossians where it says, it's not other people that we're serving, but it is the Lord Jesus Christ. That is what we are called to do, to serve him. Jesus had a really clear purpose and strategy. That's number 3. There's that famous passage, isn't there, where he stands up in the synagogue at the start of his ministry and he quotes from Isaiah and he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour." But in quoting that, did you notice that he actually, if you go back to where it's originally referenced in Isaiah, he actually stopped in the middle of a verse. And that's because he knows that he has been called to the desire, the need for salvation. He has not been called to judgment. It carries on to say, to proclaim the day of vengeance of our God. He knew what his purpose was. Number 4, he established his priorities. We see occasions where Jesus is pressed to stay in one place, but he responds that he must preach the good news to everybody. There's loads and loads of good stuff that he could be doing, but he knows that his mission is to keep on moving on. This is because he knew his priorities. Now, some of you came to a seminar that I did on a Zone Sunday about time management, and I had this brilliant illustration with a jar, and in the process of doing that I managed to smash the jar. So I'm not going to do that illustration now, but I'm just going to explain it to you. So basically, imagine you've got a big glass jar in front of you, and that represents time. That's all the time that you've been given as a gift from God. But then imagine that there's I'm pouring gravel into it, okay? It's little tiny bits of gravel, and I fill that up with gravel, and that represents all the little things that we do with our time. The fairly inconsequential things. It might be when you're binge watching Netflix, or it might be scrolling through the BBC News app, as I sometimes find myself doing. Unnecessary time on the phone, maybe, watching on YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is that happens to you. But there's a number of different things that fill our lives. Then I put in some medium-sized stones and it sort of started to fill the jar up. And these are the things that are important, but they're not the biggest priorities in our lives. That might include things like, cleaning, shopping, clubs, hobbies, all that kind of stuff. really important things, but not the most essential. And what we found is that filled it almost to the top. And then we had these big stones, which were the really important things. And we tried to fit them in, but they just would not fit in. I think that might have been where I managed to smash the jar trying to do it. Those are the things that are the actual priorities. Now we then emptied it all out and we started again, and we put the big priorities in first. We then put the important things that needed to be done in second, and then believe it or not, there was actually still space to put quite a lot of the gravel in. In fact, I think we managed to get all the gravel in at the end. It was quite amazing, the difference in the way that you put the order in. Now, I'm not saying that is a perfect analogy for your lives, but it does make the point. If you put the big things in first, and then add the other things afterwards, you'll find that the priorities are dealt with. You might find that your jar overflows, in which case you've actually got the problem of genuinely having too much to do, and that is a separate issue. So number 5, we've done 4. So number 5 is that Jesus still made time for individuals. So despite knowing his purpose, you notice that he will stop and spend time with the people that really need him. Number 6, he recognized the need for rest. He knew that he wasn't just going to be going all of the time. He wasn't legalistic about the Sabbath, but he really did take it seriously. And he knew the importance of taking time to withdraw and to rest with his Father God. So in your groups, I'd just like you to discuss those 6 examples from Jesus. Talk them through. Does one of them stand out for you more than the others? Is there one that you're actually quite good at, and maybe you could share with other people how you do it? And is there one of those that you really struggle with? Hopefully that was a useful discussion. Now, what practically can we do to try and prioritise things? Sometimes we're busy, because we don't really manage our time well. It's not because we have too much to do. The writer of Proverbs says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty." The plans of the diligent. So there could be a hint in there about planning. There are loads of different tools that we could use in time management. So a really simple one, if you've not done it before, is actually just logging your time. So take a few days and write down everything you do. Write down whether or not it's something you plan to do, or is it something that just happened to you and you had to do it. You can use a piece of software. It's called Toggle. I told my work colleague about it, and he uses it all the time now, and he finds it really, really helpful to look back and evaluate whether or not his time was used wisely. And then you can use that you can use that evaluation to plan your time for the next week and just see how it goes. See whether or not you stick to what you intended to do. A second suggestion is about managing distractions. Switching off your phone notifications, your emails, your messages, your Teams, your Outlook, that kind of stuff. When you're really trying to concentrate on a particular activity, that's something that I found really, really helpful. I read one study that said that you just have to be in the same room as your mobile phone. You can just sit out the corner of your eye, and that is enough to massively reduce your memory and reduce your problem solving skills. Isn't that crazy? It's like your phone is calling out to you to say, "Oh, just turn me over and have a quick look at what it is that's going on." Emails, for those of us that do jobs that involve email, managing your email is really, really key. Setting a time to read it, snoozing emails, moving them into folders, scheduling them, using email rules, basically just taking control of your email. Don't let that run your life. It's just not that significant. The other thing you can do is make appointments with yourself to do certain tasks. I went on a management course years and years ago, and I remember somebody saying, "Oh, you schedule meetings, but why don't you schedule actual work?" And I came back from that and actually started planning in time to do specific things, and that made a massive difference to me actually getting stuff done rather than just talking about it. If you know you're a last minute person, then plan in time last minute to actually get the job done. Now, one of the best tools that I've found for doing this is something called the Eisenhower Matrix. So the Eisenhower Matrix is something where you basically categorize your task based on urgency and importance. So there's 4 quadrants that you can see. So top left is things that are important and urgent. So for example, those might be things that you really have to do quite quickly. So I'm a parent, my kids are in trouble at school, I need to go and pick them up really, really fast. It might be that a bridge that I've designed has got a problem on site and I need to go and deal with it. Those things just have to be dealt with. But living in that top left box all of the time is depressing, and it is very, very stressful. The top right, which is important but not urgent, now they're the really key things. They're the things that are going to make a difference to your life. These are probably the things that actually you feel like Jesus has called you to. Those are the things you need to plan time to do. You'll never get to them, or they'll become urgent and important things if you're not careful. Things that aren't important but are urgent, are they things that someone else could do? Could you delegate them, pass them to somebody else? And finally, not urgent and not important things, do you actually need to do them at all? So the final activity is, I would like you to grab a piece of paper each and split that paper into those 4 quadrants, and then look at the activities that you put down earlier and see if you can allocate them into those 4 squares. Now, you might do this and think it doesn't really change anything, but you might do this and think, oh, there's some activities or some things that I could give to other people. There's some things I really need to plan for, and there are other things that I just need to get on and do quickly. So we talked about some really good tools that we could make use of in our time management. But one thing I'd like to leave you with is that you just don't let this take control of your life. I heard a story about some theology students that were set off to do a task, and some of them were given a time deadline and some of them weren't. And of those of them and then basically on their way to doing this task, they came across a stage scenario where someone needed some help. For those that had been put on this time deadline, they were theology students, but only 10% of them actually stopped and helped. Whereas in the group that hadn't got a time deadline, 63% of them stopped and helped. We saw that Jesus had time for individuals. So no matter how important our schedules are, we need to remember that. Time management is a servant, not a master. It's God that rules our lives, not our calendars. Sometimes we just need to slow down. I'll leave you with 3 final points. What you do matters more than how much you do. How you do it matters more than how much you do. And why you do what you do matters much more than how much you do. So let's take some time now praying for each other. There'll be some suggestions on the screen of ways that we can do that.